At the end of the year, who can resist a best of list? Well, certainly not us here at GR&R, we bloody love them, so why not run down our favourite cars of 2022? Yeah, go on then. And if you do enjoy the video, don't forget to hit that like button and, subscribe to the channel, and then I'll shut up and we'll talk about the first thing that comes from Porsche. This is in no particular order, but talk about starting strong. The Cayman GT4 RS arrived into the world at the start of 2022, screamed its way past the GT3 and took the position of favourite mental Porsche of all. It was pretty cold when we got a chance to try out the GT4 RS, but given that it has the engine from the GT3, rear-wheel drive only, and a whacking great rear wing, it didn't take long to get some heat into our tyres. The GT4 RS has 80 horsepower more than the standard GT4, if you can call that standard, and another 30 Nm, and therefore will hit 62 miles an hour as fast as the Porsche 911 GT3. Pretty impressive, no? But what's more impressive is the way that it drives. The GT4 RS is a total nutjob in almost every manner. That flat 6 screams around to 9,000 RPM and sounds like death being tortured for the last 1,000 or so. It also grips like there's no tomorrow and will try to torture every single one of your senses in the most wonderful way. Find the right piece of road in your GT4 RS and you might find that your heart rate monitor is a little bit concerned for your future. Okay, so we have a few issues with the GV60. It does look a little bit like a blobfish from several angles. It's really rather expensive and the chintzy bits, well, they're a bit chintzy, but actually, underneath it all, what Genesis has done is really rather impressive. It does help that the GV60 is based on the Kia EV6 and Hyundai Ioniq 5 platform, allowing Genesis to start with the two best EVs ever made. But the GV60 has its own character. It drives better than the Ioniq 5 but feels less rear biased than the EV6. It also has a drift mode and a boost mode that will attempt to remove your face. Most important is that this, the most expensive of the three, feels worth it inside. Yes, there's spangly bits around like that rotating crystal ball, but they're all very nicely put together. And even though the basics of its guts are the same as the EV6, the quality hits proper executive levels. And the best bit is that on the inside, you don't actually have to look at it. You do wonder what the execs at Volkswagen think of the Cupra Born. If you happen to have been in both Volkswagen's ID3 and the Born, you'll know that Cupra's version spends most of its time just highlighting all the things that are wrong with its German sibling. Underneath, in large parts, they are the same, but the Born looks better and feels better. So much so that it's probably influenced Volkswagen's very public acceptance that it needs to change the ID3. Its main problem is that it looks like it'll do more than it does. It's got a big chin and a diffuser, plus there's that Cupra badge, and they all suggest performance, when in reality it has identical figures to the ID3. But look past that and the Born does drive well, and it's even a little bit slidey in the wet, but overall it's extremely competent and a very comfortable family car. There is a sportier version coming as well that should solve a few of those foibles, but even then, already the Born is probably the best choice in its class. The Morgan three-wheeler is dead. Long live the Morgan 3 Super 3. That's the one. With the Super 3, Morgan gave itself one of the toughest tasks in the motoring world. How do you radically overhaul a car that is little more than 3 wheels and an engine? But we should never doubt that team over in Malvern. If anyone could think that laterally, it was the company that is only just relinquishing its belief that wood is the best building material for cars. The answer, it seems, was to put the engine on the inside, not the outside, make that engine one from an actual car and sprinkle some tech on the interior, if you can call any part of the Morgan Super 3 its interior. Gone is that thumpy V-twin, in its place a Ford 1.5 litre 3-cylinder like the Fiesta ST. It now has 118 horsepower and 129 Nm, but it still weighs less than half of an actual Fiesta. And somehow it just, well, it works. There is still nothing in the mainstream that feels like a Super 3 to drive. The MX-5 gearbox is excellent, the engine delivers power perfectly, and it'll slide around like nothing else on those weeny little tyres. If you like fun, go on and buy one. Some i4s have an M badge on them and we take issue with that. However, what the i4 actually is underneath that is perhaps something the EV market has been crying out for. You see, it's great that designers and engineers have been using the freedom that EV powertrains provide to allow them to think more outside the box when creating new cars. But a century of making vehicles has meant that we all do have expectations as to what a car should look like. The i4 is, to all intents and purposes, an average family executive car. It just happens to be an EV. It's sort of a saloon come fastback with 4 doors, 5 seats and room for luggage. To top it off, it drives really well. It's stonkingly quick in a straight line and it feels like a proper BMW. The innards, well, they're the essence of Bimmer. Perhaps the only downside is that its big screen looks like it's been sort of plonked on the dash rather than integrated, but it's all top notch in there. Also, once you've specced up a 3 Series to this level, the extra EV price is pretty negligible. Before we move on, we'd like to say Happy New Year, Merry Christmas, or if you're watching this next summer, I hope your holiday's nice, and remind you that we do appreciate you watching this video. And if you do like it, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel, and then we'll move on to something else from Norfolk. Is this the car with the toughest job in the world? It doesn't just have to replace the Elise. It doesn't just have to replace the Exige. It doesn't just have to replace the Evora. It has to replace them all, and it has to be good enough to be the final internal combustion engined Lotus ever. Talk about a tough remit. And Lotus has approached this Herculean task by not really changing the engines at all. They're still the same inline 4 and V6, and if that's not the most Lotus thing ever, I'm not really sure what is. But when has what actually motivates a Lotus ever really mattered? It's the chassis that matters, and here we strike Lotus Gold. Proper, hydraulically assisted steering, soft springs with firm dampers. This is a car that's made for stringing corner after corner together. And it turns out to be perfect for just that. This small, medium and big Lotus brings us everything that Lotus has been so good at, and adds a little touch of refinement that was always ever so slightly lacking. Given that this is the final petrol car from Lotus, and that it has replaced so many cars, expect to see a lot of different special versions and alternative specs to come, but this one has started out really promisingly on its farewell tour. Cost of living crisis? Pfft, what cost of living crisis? The Range Rover will continue to grow from strength to strength no matter what the world tries to throw at it, and the latest one, well, it's no exception. It's also no exception to the norm, taking what we expect from a Rangy and making it all just a little bit better rather than ripping everything to pieces. But making everything better means that the whole improvement is greater than the sum of its parts. This is pretty much the most capable and possibly the best car in the world. It'll go off-road, it'll go on-road, it'll waft around London, or it'll tackle Ben Nevis. You can round up sheep or round up some well-heeled children, all in supreme comfort. The new interior updates the tech and adds another layer of quality. The exterior just minimises a few of the details, and altogether it is magnificent. There's also a plug-in version incoming, which means that the Range Rover's breadth of abilities just continues to expand. Quite simply, no matter what they do, the Range Rover is without rival. If the Emira had a tough act to follow, the FL5 Honda Civic Type R has no simpler a task. And, like the Lotus and the Rangy, we're extremely thankful to find that Honda has not shanked this one. Hot hatches seem to be in danger. Either they're becoming a massive tech fest with price points that start in the 60,000s, or they're just being canned, so it's comforting to know that the Type R is still a front-wheel drive, manual, powered by an inline 4. It does, even we have to admit, look a little plain. But that may be because the FK8 looked absolutely mental, and it's largely also because all the attention has gone into the underneath, and that, Well, that's a good thing. The 2-litre 4-cylinder turbo is an evolution, but now has 329 horsepower and loses some of the foibles of its predecessor, like the weird rev hang on gear change. And it has all worked. The FL9 Type R is sharp and predictable, a little less mad than some of its rivals, but fun in a much more usable way. The gearbox is delightful, and even though the rear wing looks like a bit of an afterthought, it has been developed to create real downforce. There's a chance that this could be the last ever Civic Type R, so let's thank goodness that if it is, it's going to go out on a high. We'll have a full video on it early in the new year. And now for something completely different. Yes, the Dacia Jogger absolutely fits on this list. In fact, it's a bit like the Range Rover in that really, it doesn't have any rivals today. How many other 7-seat MPV cum crossovers do you find for £15,000? Yes, 15. And also like the Rangy, the Jogger just does everything brilliantly that's needed of it. And deep down, the Jogger isn't just capable, it's a little bit brilliant. There's room for even the largest family. There are ingenious ways of packaging even more storage space. It actually looks decent and it's quite enjoyable to drive. If you need 7 seats, it's really hard to argue that you need anything else in your life, or really that there's anything else to say about the Jogger. However, there is still absolutely nothing available in any price range that can make you feel the way the Alpine A110 does in spades. A sports car that could not give a toss about lap times or impressing people by getting there faster. The A110 just wants to get there and leave you desperate to keep on going. It's now had a mild update, and there's a new harder core version for those who do actually care about lap times, the A110R, but it is still the basic one that is the best. And you can now even get a new aero pack with a rear wing. Don't. And there are some new colours. But deep down, it's the same thing with a sprinkling of extra tech. And that is exactly what we want from our A110, the same as before. Sure, the Emira is now giving it a little bit to think about in 2022, but in reality, as far as we're concerned, nothing can eat into the appeal of this slice of French heaven. The A110 has no wish to be compared with other cars. It doesn't need to be and will remain being its own thing, and that's great because its own thing may be the best of all the things. Well, those are the 10 cars that we've driven this year that we think are the best. But what have you been driving and having a lot of fun in? What do you think should be on this list? Let us know in the comments.